A conversation can change your life. We are two ordinary women looking to have extraordinary and authentic conversations. Our desire is for this to be a place where all are welcome, to come as you are, willing to emotionally grow, gain confidence, and tap into your internal wisdom.
When you know and utilize your strengths, the capacity to be forgiving, kind, and encouraging is increased exponentially. We all have amazing strengths and positive attributes. So let's learn from each other. We are delighted you are here on this journey with us and hope you will invite a friend to join you here. Welcome.
Hello and welcome. We are so glad to be here with you. I am Sue Riekels. I'm here with my colleague Connie Wilder. And today I have the privilege and honor of interviewing Connie on a topic that she has talked about since we first met. And I'm so excited to hear her wisdom on it. And that is these human suits of ours. Connie, I'm really curious to hear what that means to you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Sue, for the introduction as well. And it's great to be here with everyone. And so, human suits, these darn human suits of ours, they are as unique as our fingerprint. And I often feel like Webster with those multiple definitions, the one, two, three. I'm not sure how many definitions I have or how many I'll get to today. Yet the human suit is as unique as our fingerprint. And it's that compilation of our life experiences, our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings. Yes, there's the F word, feelings. And those coupled with what else? What else am I missing? The perspective, I guess. And so the life experiences, those thoughts, emotions, and feelings, and we're trapped in these human suits. It's a function of, we're trapped in these human suits, meaning I've got my human suit, you've got your human suit. They are as unique as our fingerprint, and yet how do we become unstoppable in our human suit as well? How do we leverage our human suits to be the biggest and best and boldest? Maybe the biggest is not the brightest, not the best idea. However, our human suits are, yes, we're in these human suits, and how do we become unstoppable in those human suits?
Thank you, Connie, for giving us an insight into that viewpoint of these unique human suits of ours. So, as you think about our human suits, I'm curious if you can elaborate on shortcomings or limitations of of these human suits that we're in.
Yes, I can because I'm a human being and I look and listen for a lot. As a coach, I'm always have my coaching hat on, even when I'm not in a coaching session. I'm always watching, for example, on um, anything related to presentation skills because I'm a coach and I'm a presentation skills coach. I've always got my eye on this different things. As it relates to my human suit, I am stuck in my human suit. I sometimes get mad too. I get mad and frustrated like everybody else. And those are not bad emotions, they're not negative. Yet the way in which I utilize my anger or my madness or my frustration might limit me sometimes. And so there's one definition. Does that help, Sue?
No, definitely. And again, bringing in the insight of where it can show up and somewhat limit us. So, on the flip, I'm curious, what do you see the advantages being of
Mm.
these unique human suits that we're in?
Well, one of our biggest advantages that I've always said is our awareness. So
Hmm.
as a human being, if I can move into awareness, being aware that I'm mad or frustrated or whatever it is, whatever that emotional piece is, because I can feel my feelings as long as I don't get sucked underwater by those feelings, right? And we're at an interesting time culturally when we talk about feelings. And, we had the whole check your feelings, check your emotions at the door. Sometimes, oh, women are way too emotional or she's way too emotional. We know what that is kind of. I mean, we've all heard it. And so whether it's directed at ourselves or someone else, what does that actually mean? Yet if I can bring my awareness, which is a huge, huge and powerful, it doesn't make any of those things go away. It just makes it me aware of them. and opportunity wise, leveraging that awareness to make a better choice for myself in
Yeah.
that moment. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And thank you for bringing awareness to the advantages. So if you were to think about balancing these two, um, is there any insight you have to navigating that through mindfulness or like that awareness that you just spoke of that could help us utilize them in helpful ways, as like you mentioned, noticing others, but also noticing for yourself? Any insight into that application of them?
Yes, 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 yes. I feel like this is going to be a little bit vulnerable for me, but yes, the awareness piece I mentioned, and that awareness isn't just like, oh, okay, I'm mad. It's like, because when I'm mad, right? I can get hooked into that emotion. Yet the power of the pause is one technique that's incredibly valuable. And so what does that mean? What is the power of the pause? Yet how can I pause? How can I sit with something a little bit longer and then recognize that, wow, this person is not incredibly ill-intended, or sometimes I don't know the intentions of somebody else, and sometimes I'm mad about it. Um, and so how does that power of the pause impact that? That's a huge, huge opportunity. It's easy to say the power of the pause. It's a much different thing to actually integrate it and apply it and be mindful and sit with it, sit with something. Does that make sense, Sue? Have you had to sit with anything recently?
It does. And yes, I have. And can I just say, from a neurological standpoint, what is happening to our nervous system, because I always go back to that piece, is the pause actually creates a space for us to get resourced and grounded so that our frontal lobe comes back online and we can have a conversation, because otherwise we're coming from that raw emotion place and it's heated or it's unresourced. And so that's when we do damage. So I love that you brought up that pause, because it actually does neurologically bring our brain to a place where we can have a conversation that's beneficial versus reactive.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Sue, and
what
I want to tell you that you have had an enormous impact on me with regards to the power of the pause and moving it from something I know to something that is applicable. And it doesn't make it all sunshine and roses. It's not about that. It is about that incredibly well resourced, which is the place that I want to come from. So thank you for the impact that you've had on me for that.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you in reverse, because I think together we do share that. And we have had to work things ourselves, but in other relationships that we've talked about. And the impact of doing this
Mm.
is significant, because otherwise we can do more damage and then not rebuild the relationship or rebuild what we're hoping to do. So I'm curious, as you sit with the human suit of yourself and the question of not knowing what the other person's human suit is, any wisdom into seeing it from their perspective or being curious? Like, how do you approach these unique suits of ours when somebody else's might be very different than yours? Any
Wow. Wow.
no,
What's the last thing you said?
any insight from you regarding that?
It's so interesting. And a very wise resource asked me recently, do I ever get intimidated by the people I have to meet with? And I said, no. I said, I don't. I said, I certainly don't at this stage. And, and I guess early on, and I don't know if it was early on in my life or early on in my career, someone once told me that there will always be people far wiser and far lesser than yourself, Connie. And I was like, oh, that makes sense to me. And so those nuggets of truth that make sense to you, that make sense to me, they add my perspective, they add my experience in my own human suit. And so that's one thing. That also Rob Bell, he's an author and pastor. He was a pastor of a mega church in Michigan, left his church, and went on to become this amazing writer. He's an international best-selling writer. And he wrote books like Velvet Elvis. He also wrote a book called, I think it's called Love. And yet I walked into a Christian bookstore in my own area where I live, and I said, "Oh, do you have this book by Rob Bell? Then the author of it's Love." And the woman like looked me up and down, like I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like what did I like? The body language of what she just said. Well, then I got the book, and the first line in the book is, "Did Gandhi go to hell?" Like is Gandhi spending his eternity in hell? Which I don't know. I mean, I certainly have my opinions about that, and my opinion of that is no, he's not. And so, sorry to get controversial. I just remembered this is being recorded. And so that whole thing, like she and I, that woman in the bookstore, had very different human suits on, and I was like, oh, I'm being ostracized because I asked for the book. Well, needless to say, that bookstore did not carry that book, and so that's okay, right? It's okay that we all have these differences, and it's okay that people think differently, even though we want people to think the way we think, and that we think our thinking is fair and accurate and correct. And it's not always correct. And so, yeah, that's the other piece that the human suit has given me. And it's okay that it's not correct. I'm trapped in this human suit. And while I want to live a life where I help others recognize what their potential is, it's okay that I sometimes get stopped in my own tracks with my own potential too.
Connie, thank you so much for being vulnerable. And if I can repeat back what I heard you say, because it's so rich and I don't want to lose this, is that you are confident in who you are. Don't necessarily get intimidated, at least not anymore. And there's moments, and really trust and see that in everybody, they have their richness. And yet there's moments where you experience, I think you used the word, a feeling of ostracized or that look. And it's not necessarily because you're insecure, but because it's something you're coming up against and another belief. And while you can hold yours, you're noticing it might be rubbing someone else's. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, you did.
That is beautiful. And I think that is a key, a deep key to all of these human suits of ours. And I just thank you so much for sharing that so beautifully. I love, 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 love that. Another wise person also told me, and I think it is appropriate to share here, is if you find yourself being the smartest person in the room, turn inside or move on, because there's always someone else smarter that you can learn and grow from, whether it's a different belief or a different something. And so just recognizing that as well. And I just think that matches what you just said, is that you never look at yourself as being the smartest person in the room. You know what you're bringing to the room, but not necessarily from that ego place. And key. Any thoughts you wanted to share as I just shared in those moments?
I had a client early in my coaching career, so more than 20 some years, 20
Some of those years.
Yeah. And he wanted me to tell him that he was CEO material. And I was newly out of my ICF accredited program, and I was like, well, I know that's not my job. It's not my job to tell him what he needs, what he wants to do. And so I was all like in my head, like, it's not my job. It's not my job. Well, he like pressed me and really wanted me to tell him that he was CEO material. And I knew that that was not my job as a new coach to tell him that. And so I held my ground and I said, let's examine this. Let's pause with this, because, now how I would handle that today is very different, perhaps, than how I handled it then. I still would not tell the person that it's not my job as a coach. I don't have all the answers. I don't know if you're CEO material. However, I do know that that's an inside out perspective. It is time for you to look inside yourself and ask yourself some really tough questions. And you can seek other people's opinion, and that there's value in that. It's simply their perspective. And it is their perspective on whether or not you're CEO material. And I think there was more than that. What that CEO was at, or that potential CEO. I don't think he ever became a CEO because of that. Well, I won't go into that, but anyhow, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
No, and that really is a piece of leveraging our own internal knowing. And I love that you brought it back to that, because nobody else knows us like we know ourselves. Yes, I love, getting input. It would have been a different thing if you would have asked you, what things do I need to work on to become CEO? Now that's a different story.
Yeah.
But, and so I'm hearing again, the way it was worded was more of his than, something that he could get from you, if I heard that right.
Correct. You did hear that correctly.
So as we start to wrap up today, I'm going to just ask, if we were to optimize, in your viewpoint, these human suits of ours, what wisdom would you want us to walk away with in being able to fully utilize them in positive ways?
Ah, that's so beautiful. I love that question. So, what ways would we want to optimize and utilize our human suits for a positive impact on others? Is that accurate? Did I hear you correctly? And so, what? I don't know, Sue. Let's see. That's a big question, and I do know the answer to that actually. And so, the ways in which we optimize our human suit depend on what we have been through. Like, how do we optimize? How do I optimize my human suit? And how do I optimize that? Through the power of pause, through stretching and growing and becoming. Who do I want to be? Having goals, having a vision statement. It's a bunch of the fundamentals. And we're living at a time where the fundamentals are going to rule the day. We're living at a time where, the CEO of United Healthcare was just shot point blank on the street, which is never a way to settle our differences using gun violence. It's not a way to settle our differences. And so there are some things that are deal breakers, and yet now we're seeing all this. Well, I haven't seen it because I was away for the weekend, yet we're seeing all this stuff on social media about the gunmen, people having empathy with the gunman is what I've gleaned from a couple conversations with people this morning. And you can have a lot of compassion for the gunman. You can have compassion for doing some things about the way our insurance works. Yet gun violence is not the answer. It never is. Anyhow, I'm off track on this answer.
No, but you showed a great example, though, of even in extremes, how we can still have compassion, not justification, but compassion. And I think it is about knowing that without going to a point where we are so angry that we use violence, if I heard that correctly. And that is a huge takeaway of, I don't think there's anything we can't work through. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. There's so much we can work through. And that, Sue, you have been a leader in that capacity. There's so much we can work through. And, our awareness, let that be the driver of that leverage for positive change.
Connie, thank you. I know you are going to continue in our discussions to bring your human suit and all the wisdom that it contains. And I thank you so much for that. And to all the viewers, we invite you to go out and be the change, be that positive role model in your human suit, noticing, pausing, and taking that next step to make a change.
Remember, a conversation can change your life. We invite you to be the best version of yourself. When you feel better, you do better.
We welcome hearing from you. To learn more about us, suggest topics to be discussed, or to reach out to us directly, visit our websites listed in the notes below.